a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Seinfeld. Seinfeld is an American television sitcom that ran for 9 seasons on NBC, from 1989 to 1998. It was created by Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, with the latter starring as a fictionalized version of himself, set predominantly in an apartment building in Manhattan's Upper West Side in New York City. The show features a handful of Jerry's friends and acquaintances, particularly best friend George Costanza, former girlfriend Elaine Benes, and neighbor across the hall Cosmo Kramer. It is often described as being a show about nothing, as many of its episodes are about the minutiae of daily life. Seinfeld was produced by Castle Rock Entertainment. In syndication, the series has been distributed by Sony Pictures Television since 2002. It was largely written by David and Seinfeld, with script writers who included Larry Charles, Peter Mehlman, Gregg Kavet, Carol Leifer, David Mandel, Jeff Schaffer, Steve Koren, Jennifer Crittenden, Tom Gammill, Max Pross, Dan O'Keefe, Charlie Rubin, Marjorie Gross, Alec Berg, Elaine Pope, and Spike Festin. A favorite among critics, the series led the Nielsen ratings in seasons 6 and 9, and finished among the top 2 every year from 1994 to 1998. Seinfeld is widely considered to be one of the greatest and most influential sitcoms ever made. It has been ranked among the best television shows of all time in publications such as Entertainment Weekly, Rolling Stone, and TV Guide. The show's most renowned episodes include The Chinese Restaurant, The Parking Garage, and The Contest. In 2013, the Writers Guild of America voted it the number 2 best-written TV series of all time. Named the series the number 1 reason the 90s ruled, and quotes from numerous episodes have become catchphrases in popular culture. Characters. Many characters have made multiple appearances, like Jerry's nemesis Newman and his Uncle Leo. In addition to recurring characters, Seinfeld features numerous celebs who appear as themselves or girlfriends, boyfriends, bosses and other acquaintances. Many actors who made guest appearances became household names later in their careers, or were already well known. Plotlines. Many Seinfeld episodes are based on the writer's real-life experiences, with the experiences reinterpreted for the character's storyline. For example, George's storyline, The Revenge, is based on Larry David's experience at Saturday Night Live. The Contest is also based on David's experiences. The Smelly Car storyline is based on Peter Mehlman's lawyer friend, who could not get a bad smell out of his car. The Strike is based on Dan O'Keefe's dad, who made up his own holiday, Festivus. Other stories take on a variety of turns. The Chinese Restaurant consists of George, Jerry and Elaine waiting for a table throughout the entire episode. The Boyfriend, revolving around Keith Hernandez, extends through 2 episodes. The Betrayal is famous for using reverse chronology, and was inspired by a similar plot device in a Harold Pinter play, Betrayal. Some stories were inspired by headlines and rumors, as explained in the DVD features, Notes About Nothing, Inside Look, and audio commentary. In The Maestro, Kramer's lawsuit is roughly similar to the McDonald's coffee case. The Outing is based primarily on rumors that Larry Charles heard about Jerry Seinfeld's sexuality. Themes. The series was often described as a show about nothing. However, Seinfeld in 2014 stated, the pitch for the show, the real pitch, when Larry and I went to NBC in 1988, was we want to show how a comedian gets his material. The show about nothing was just a joke in an episode many years later, and Larry and I, to this day, are surprised that it caught on as a way that people describe the show, because to us it's the opposite of that. Seinfeld broke several conventions of mainstream television. The show offers no growth or reconciliation to its characters. It eschews sentimentality. An episode is typically driven by humor interspersed with the superficial conflicts of characters with peculiar dispositions. Many episodes revolve around the characters' involvement in the lives of others with typically disastrous results. On the set, the notion that the characters should not develop or improve throughout the series was expressed as the no hugging, no learning rule. Also, unlike most sitcoms, there are no moments of pathos. The audience is never made to feel sorry for any of the characters. Even Susan's death elicits no genuine emotions from anybody in the show. The characters are 30-something singles with vague identities, no roots, and conscious indifference to morals. Usual conventions, like isolating the characters from the actors playing them, and separating the characters' world from that of the actors and audience, were broken. One such example is the story arc, where the characters promote a TV sitcom series named Jerry. The show within a show, Jerry, was much like Seinfeld in that it was about nothing. And Seinfeld played himself. The fictional Jerry was launched in the season 4 finale, but unlike Seinfeld, it wasn't picked up as a series. Jerry is one of many examples of metafiction in the show. There are no fewer than 22 fictional movies featured, like Rochelle. Because of these several elements, Seinfeld became the first TV series since Monty Python's Flying Circus to be widely described as postmodern. Jerry Seinfeld is an avid Abbott and Costello fan, and has cited the Abbott and Costello show as an influence on Seinfeld. Everybody on the show knows I'm a fan. We're always joking about how we do stuff from their show. George and I will often get into a riff that has the rhythm from the old Abbott and Costello shows, and sometimes I'll hit George in the chest the way Abbott would hit Costello. The series includes numerous references to the team. George Costanza's middle name is Louis, after Costello. The Old Man episode featured a cantankerous character named Sid Fields, as a tribute to the landlord on the team's TV show. Kramer's friend is named Mickey Abbott. A copywriter for the J. Peterman catalog is named Eddie Sherman, after the team's longtime agent. In episode 30, Kramer hears the famous Abbott and Costello line, "His father was a mudder. His mother was a mudder." Catchphrases. Many terms were coined, popularized, or repopularized in the series' run and have become part of popular culture. Notable catchphrases and terms include the lexicon of Seinfeldian code words and recurring phrases that evolved around particular episodes as referred to as Sein language, the title of Jerry Seinfeld's best-selling book on humor. Music. A signature of Seinfeld is its theme music. Composed by Jonathan Wolfe, it consists of distinct solo-sampled bass synthesizer riffs which open the show and connect the scenes, often accompanied by beatboxing. The bass synthesizer music eventually replaced the original music by Jeff Epstein when it was played again after the first broadcast. The Seinfeld Chronicles. The show lacked a traditional title track and the riffs were played over the first moments of dialogue or action. They vary throughout each episode and are played in an improvised funk style. An additional musical theme with an ensemble, led by a synthesized mid-range brass instrument, ends each episode. In The Note, the first episode of Season 3, the bumper music featured a scatting female jazz singer who sang a phrase that sounded like, "easy to beat." Jerry Seinfeld and executive producer Larry David both liked Wolfe's additions, and 3 episodes were produced with this new style music. However, they had neglected to inform NBC and Castle Rock executives of the change, and when the season premiere aired, the executives were surprised and unimpressed, and requested that they return to the original style. The subsequent 2 episodes were redone, leaving this episode as the only one with additional music elements. In the commentary of The Note, Louis Dreyfus facetiously suggests it was removed because the perceived lyric related closely to the low ratings at the time. In the final 3 seasons, the bits were tweaked slightly, with more frantic rhythms. A bass guitar was added in addition to the sampled bass from earlier seasons. Throughout the show, the main theme could be restyled in different ways depending on the episode. For instance, in The Betrayal, part of which takes place in India, the theme is heard played on a sitar. Episodes. Seinfeld stood out from family and group sitcoms of its time. None of the principal characters are related by family or work connections, but remain distinctively close friends throughout the series. Many characters were based primarily on Seinfeld's and David's real-life acquaintances. 2 prominent recurring characters were based on well-known people, Jacopo Peterman of the J. Peterman catalog, and George Steinbrenner, owner of the New York Yankees. Many characters were introduced as new writers got involved with Seinfeld. Other characters based on real people include the Soup Nazi and Jackie Chiles based on Johnny Cochran. Seinfeld follows its own structure, story thread is presented at the beginning of every episode, which involves the characters starting in their own situations. Rapid scene shifts between plot lines bring the stories together. Even though it does not follow a pattern as other sitcoms, the characters' stories variously intertwine in each episode. Despite the separate plot strands, the narratives reveal the creators' consistent efforts to maintain the intimacy among the small cast of characters. The show maintains a strong sense of continuity. Characters and plots from past episodes are often referenced or expanded on. Occasionally, story arcs span multiple episodes and even entire seasons, the most memorable being Season 4, which revolved around the pilot pitched to NBC by Jerry and George. Another example is Jerry's girlfriend Vanessa, who appears in The Stakeout, and he ends the relationship when things do not work out in The Stock Tip. Other examples are Kramer getting his jacket back, and Elaine heading the Peterman catalog. Larry David, the head writer and executive producer for the first 7 seasons, was praised for keeping a close eye on minor details and making sure the main characters' lives remained consistent and believable. Curb Your Enthusiasm, David's later comedy series, expanded on this idea by following a specific theme for all but one season in the series. A major difference between Seinfeld and sitcoms which preceded it is that the principal characters never learn from their mistakes. In effect, they are indifferent and even callous towards the outside world and sometimes one another. A mantra of the show's producers was, "No hugging, no learning." Entertainment Weekly's TV critic Ken Tucker has described them as a group dynamic rooted in jealousy, rage, insecurity, despair, hopelessness, and a touching lack of faith in one's fellow human beings. This leads to very few happy endings, except at somebody else's expense. More often in every episode, situations resolve with characters getting a justly deserved comeuppance. Seasons 1-3. The show premiered as The Seinfeld Chronicles on July 5, 1989. After it aired, a pickup by NBC seemed unlikely and the show was offered to Fox, which declined to pick it up. Rick Ludwin, head of late night and special events for NBC, however, diverted money from his budget by canceling a Bob Hope television special, and the next 4 episodes were filmed. These episodes were highly rated as they followed summer reruns of Cheers on Thursdays at 9:30 p.m. and the series was finally picked up. At one point NBC considered airing these episodes on Saturdays at 10:30 p.m. but gave that slot to a short-lived sitcom called FM. The series was renamed Seinfeld after the failure of short-lived 1990 ABC series The Marshall Chronicles. After airing in the summer of 1990, NBC ordered 13 more episodes. Larry David believed that he and Jerry Seinfeld had no more stories to tell, and advised Seinfeld to turn down the order, but Seinfeld agreed to the additional episodes. Season 2 was bumped off its scheduled premiere of January 16, 1991, due to the outbreak of the Gulf War. It settled into the regular time slot on Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. and eventually flipped with veteran series Night Court to 9 o'clock. TV critics championed Seinfeld in its early seasons, even as it was slow to cultivate a substantial audience. For the first 3 seasons, Jerry's stand-up comedy act would bookend an episode, even functioning as cut scenes during the show. A few episodes set a benchmark for later seasons. The Deal establishes Jerry and Elaine's relationship by setting rules about sleeping together and remaining friends. The Parking Garage was the first episode shot with no audience for the episode and, after, The Chinese Restaurant, with not showing Jerry's apartment. The Keys contains a crossover to CBS show Murphy Brown, marking the first such cooperation between rival networks. The Busboy introduces George, Kramer, and Elaine as having their own storylines for the first time. Although Castle Rock Entertainment's Glenn Padnick thought Jerry Seinfeld was too generous, showcasing his co-star's comedic talent became a trademark throughout the series. Larry Charles wrote an episode for Season 2, The Bet, in which Elaine buys a gun from Kramer's friend. This episode wasn't filmed because the content was deemed unacceptable and was replaced by the episode, The Phone Message. The Stranded, aired in Season 3, was intended for Season 2. In the beginning of this episode, Jerry clears up the continuity error over George's real estate job. Seasons 4-5. Season 4 marked the sitcom's entry into the Nielsen Ratings Top 30, coinciding with several popular episodes, such as The Bubble Boy, in which George and the Bubble Boy argue over Trivial Pursuit, and The Junior Mint, in which Jerry and Kramer accidentally fumble a mint in the operating room. This was the first season to use a story arc of Jerry and George creating their own sitcom, Jerry. Also at this time, the use of Jerry's stand-up act slowly declined, and the stand-up segment in the middle of Seinfeld episodes was cut. Much publicity followed the controversial episode, The Contest, an Emmy Award-winning episode written by co-creator Larry David, whose subject matter was considered inappropriate for prime-time network TV. To circumvent this taboo, the word masturbation was never used in the script, instead substituted for by a variety of oblique references. Midway through that season, Seinfeld was moved from its original 9 p.m. time slot on Wednesdays to 9:30 p.m. on Thursdays, following Cheers Again, which gave the show even more popularity. Ratings also sparked the move, as Tim Allen's sitcom Home Improvement on ABC had aired at the same time and Improvement kept beating Seinfeld in the ratings. NBC moved the series after Ted Danson announced the end of Cheers, and Seinfeld quickly surpassed the ratings of the 9 p.m. Cheers reruns that spring. The show won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Comedy Series in 1993, beating out its family-oriented, time slot competitor Home Improvement, which was only in its second season on fellow network ABC. Season 5 was an even bigger ratings hit, consisting of popular episodes, such as The Puffy Shirt, in which Jerry feels embarrassed wearing a pirate shirt on The Today Show, The Non-Fat Yogurt, featuring Rudy Giuliani, the Republican then mayor-elect of New York, and The Opposite, in which George, doing the opposite of what his instincts tell him he should do, lands a job with the New York Yankees and Elaine leaves Pendant Publishing because of a comedy of errors that lead to its demise. Another story arc has George returning to live with his parents. In the midst of the story arc, Kramer creates and promotes his coffee table book. The show was again nominated for Outstanding Comedy Series, but lost to the Cheers spin-off Frasier, then in its first season. Seinfeld was nominated for the same award every year for its entire run, but always lost to Frasier, which went on to win a record 39 Emmy Awards. Season 6-7. With Season 6, Andy Ackerman replaced Tom Sharones as director of the show. The series remained well regarded, and produced some of its most famous episodes, such as The Beard, in which Jerry is put through a lie detector test to make him admit that he watched Melrose Place, The Switch, in which Kramer's mom, Babs, reveals that his first name is Cosmo, and The Understudy, in which Elaine meets Jay Peterman for the first time. Story arcs used in this season were Elaine working as a personal assistant to her eccentric boss Justin Pitt and George's parents' temporary separation. This was the first season in which Seinfeld reached number 1 in the Nielsen ratings. The use of Jerry's stand-up act declined with the end stand-up segment no longer appearing, as the storylines for all 4 characters grew denser. In Season 7, a story arc involved George getting engaged to his ex-girlfriend, Susan Ross. After the pilot, Jerry proved unsuccessful. In it, George spends most of the season regretting and trying to get out of the engagement. Along with the regular half-hour episodes, 2 notable 1-hour episodes were The Cadillac, in which George plans to date award-winning actor Marissa Tomei, and The Bottle Deposit, with Elaine and Sue Ellen participating in a bidding war to buy JFK's golf clubs in an auction. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?